Share the screen. Yeah, so can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to run us through um, a little bit of the basics of how the web works. Okay, so
Yeah.
primarily, the web works with a client-server architecture, and it's what you're seeing on the screen, the request response model. Before we go deep to explain more, again, we can use the example of going to a restaurant. When you go to a restaurant, you are going to make an order. When you make the order, someone takes the order from you, like the waiter or the waitress, and then it goes in to the kitchen, the back area. Typically, you don't see it in most restaurants, right? You just place an
Yes.
order and then you wait. When the person goes, the person may tell you 15 minutes or so. After 15 minutes, the person will come with the food. That is in a restaurant where they prepare it, you know. Even if it's already prepared down to it will take some time. Basically, your order will be taken as a request. So we are trying to relate that to this now. You that enter the restaurant, you're like the client. You send a request through the waiter. It goes to the back end, the back of the restaurant you don't see. There are people working there, the kitchen area. They process that request you made, your order. And then when the food is ready, they send back a response to you, the client, to your prepared meal and you can eat. This is explaining what we are seeing in the screen using the hotel, right? Now bringing it to the web, that is how the web works. Whenever you try to access a website, you're just like someone in the restaurant who places an order. A request is sent from you, the client. It goes to a server. Server is one we also say back end. Server, there's nothing spiritual or mysterious about server. It is another computer, okay? But these computers, they are configured to be on 247. So it's just a computer in a location on Earth. And then when your request gets to that computer, somebody would have written some codes that will work on your request, just like the people in the kitchen. Just use some back end logic that will process that request. And based on what they are able to do, they are going to send a response to you. So the response could be, is okay. You see your website that you asked for. It could also be um, 404 page not found. You will not see, they will tell you page not found. Or the link, whatever. But that is the response they gave. It could be a server internal error. They will send it to you. I hope it's clear for us.
Yes.
So in
So,
a
but I want to ask a question.
okay,
So, in web development, what is the relationship between the JavaScript and these flags that we are doing? Is there any relationship?
we'll get
And
there.
what is the function?
We'll get there. We're just starting. We're just laying the
Okay.
foundation. This is just like the basics, right? You just know that it's a client server architecture. You're the client, your browser, your phone, right, or your computer is the client or the app, you know. You send a request to the server. So already you begin to see front end, back end, right? The server takes care of your request and then returns a response. Now let's go to the next page here. So what happens? Now this page throws more light into this thing we just explained. in reality, we told you the server is a computer. Every computer has like an IP address. Okay, every device has an IP address, and communication through the internet is done through the IP internet protocol. Now, in this instance, the user is trying to access google.com/maps. Okay, let's take google.com first. Now, how does the browser know the IP address where google.com is located? It will first do what is called a DNS lookup. DNS stands for domain name server. It will look up at the domain name server. It's just like a kind of computer that holds some relationship, the website and the IP address, the website and the IP address where it is hosted. It's a service that people do. So if you host your website with anybody that gives you um, that service, because you want to host a website now, you go get a domain name from a service provider. They are going to have a DNS which they use. That domain name you created now, they will map it to that DNS. And then when you try to make a request, the first thing it does is go get, using the name of the website you try to access, it goes to the DNS, picks up the IP address. So if you look here now, you can see, for instance, this. It's an IP address and a port number. So this is like a computer and a port to access that computer. So when this is brought back to your browser will use it in preparing the request to this computer, this one here, for just to display google.com. Now, all these things, it happens very fast, right? That you just see that, oh, Google just opened, pam, but it still works like that. Now, the other thing that happens is your browser can keep some kind of cache, some data in memory. So if it's a website you've been visiting every time, sometimes it just open immediately because some information is already stored in the browser. So sometimes when you have issues, we then go into the browser, we'll clear the cache, we'll clear the memory, we'll clear the browsing history. Some of those data is kept there. Okay, so let's go ahead. When you've gotten the computer IP, then you send a HTTP request. The HTTP now is the protocol. So it's either you're talking about HTTP or HTTPS. The S there is secure, and this one is not secure. HTTP is not secure. While this one is secure, is the protocol through which the request is sent over the internet. So that HTTP request is sent to the server. Now, above here, we see what the request typically looks like. The request has some parts. It has the method, either it could be a get method, like get is like, if I will use the word give me, can I have? Then we have post. Post, you're trying to say, um, I'm sending data, posting it to the server. Get, now you're just querying, asking, oh, what is this? It will bring you back a response to. But the request is typically is like this, just you have the start line, the HTTP method, the request target, like this, in this case now, /maps. Of course, we already know that we are trying to do google.com/maps. So sorry, it's cancelled. Google.com/map. So map here is the resource. Okay, look at this now. This is the protocol. This is the domain name. You do the domain name lookup. Then you have the maps. When you get to that location, then you will now go to /maps. Maps can be like a root, a resource that exists in that computer when you pick it. So all of this is defined again with your request. You have the header, request header, that contains some other details, like you see the host name here. This other side, you see the request target. Then stop. So and then you have body. Not all requests have a body. A get request typically does not have body. It is the post or put that will have body. Okay. Now, when this request comes to the server will process it. And looking at the request, it will know that you want to get action and you're getting the maps resources. It already even knows the version of HTTP or whether it's HTTPS protocol. It knows. It even can see your browser, the language you're trying to request it on, right? And then it will process it. If it has this resource maps, it will send it to you. If the request does not exist, it will also send a response telling you that this thing you requested for, I don't have it. Okay. If it is there, it will send it back to you, and then you can see the response now. Response typically will have status code. And when we now start seeing status code, we'll be seeing numbers like 200. 200 is actually okay. Everything went well. Then you have 404, resource not found. You can have 500 and something, um, server error. That means the error is the server had an error, and there are other this thing you can see different codes. We'll also just look at them too briefly. Status code. You could even Google their status code and read up on them. Now again, the response will carry its own header and body, depending on the kind of response the server is going to give you. Now, while we're talking about this thing, we are now talking about Flask. I hope we are following.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but I have a question.
Okay, let's get the
Two
question.
questions. This IP address,
Yeah.
is it, let's say, from the manufacturing of a device, is it, uh, how do I put it, there during manufacturing, or it is just when it is linked into the internet, then automatically an IP address is assigned to the device?
Yes,
Then
I. Okay, go ahead.
the second one,
Mm,
most times when a server is not found, we see 404.
hmm.
Is that one the standard error message for when a server is not found?
When a resource is not found,
Yes, when the resource is not found. Like
yes,
you
yes,
went to a URL,
mm,
it's not found.
yes. So you queried and it's
That is
not.
standard.
Yes, for
Oh,
error.
okay.
And then when you develop your own application, you can
Mm,
also work on how you want that error to be displayed. There's a standard display of that error, right? We'll see some more of these things when we're not getting to Flask. Okay.
Sometimes we see proxy.
Yeah. So that, like I said, there are many things that happen. Now in the 200, okay, any code you see with 200 is as though it's
Mm,
okay, but it's not only 200. There are other codes. When you say 400 errors, right?
mm,
There are the 400 group of errors, not only 404. So there are many error codes. Okay, that one is just popular. That's why we'll talk about it. Now going to the issue of IP address, I'm not totally sure how it is even given at this time, but it's something we can look up. I think it's typically assigned to your computer based on the network. So they have a way of assigning those numbers, right? That's the reason
okay.
why if you change internet service provider, your IP address will change.
Mm,
Okay, so they have a logic for that. I don't really remember how it is done now. Even this thing we are trying to look at here for the client server architecture is just a simplified version. This thing you're seeing is a lot, and then you can begin to see that even as you are browsing, many things are happening. But the thing is, they happen within seconds. So you may just think it's um it's just very fast, but it's a lot that goes on. Okay. So,
Yeah.
but this is just a simplified version, at least, because we are going to do Flask. What is that Flask now? Is we're talking about, we use it majorly for back end development. Okay, which is server side.
Okay.
Now,
So
go ahead. The second question.
yes, you've answered the second question. So that means no IP address is the same. Every IP address is unique and specific for every device.
Yes. In fact,
Okay.
if we talk about how that number is formed, there is a part of the number that comes from your device.
Okay.
So if we all enter the same network, right, there's a part of that number that we speak about our network, and there's a part that will have, each device will have their own individual number in that setup. Okay, so let's just look at it like something that you have your number. Let's say your own number is 001. Then the building you're in has an internet, and the internet number is 400. So, for example, yours can be 400.001, right? I'm in the
Yes.
same building, I could be 0.002, but you see that 400 is linking or something like that. So with the IP address too, they can trace back to, you can be traced where you're coming from. Okay.
Yes.
They can
Yes.
even begin to know even down to the country, down to where
Yes.
this, all those things are
Yeah.
in the encoding of that number. But I don't really know how it is even done, to be honest. It's still something me to I even need to read up and research about to be able to answer that question. Okay. There are
Yes.
some people now, their own, this thing is their own specialty. They'll be able to tell you everything in it. Me, I'm just speaking about this little one for the sake of what we want to do. Okay.
Okay. Yes, sir.
So you could see there is a HTTP response, and then you could have a socket connection. This one is like when you're something like chatting.
Mm.
Okay. Chatting works with something like a WebSocket. It's open and it will be waiting for message, and there's a way that one works is a little bit not as straightforward as you send the request and it sends you a response. Okay.
Yes.
So go to, we still have more pages here. Okay, this one is just trying to, so somebody asked a question about JavaScript and
Mm.
CSS, and so you can begin to see they are coming in here. When your response is coming back to you, the response typically brings back to you HTML, JavaScript, CSS, okay? And that's how your website is able to load. Let me show us something. If I open a new window, and I say, let's go to google.com, sorry, or any website. Now, let me right click and click on inspect, okay? So now when I click on inspect, I can now begin to see some details of what makes up this page, the elements, the sources, right? See, things that we are downloaded, network. Now let me keep this tab open and refresh it again. You see what will happen here. So when I refresh it, you could see that there is something named it. It's a style sheet, okay, like CSS.
Mm.
There's another one. You see the status. It has, this is resource name. This is resource name. This is the status. This is the type of resource. And the status now 200 is okay. It's a style sheet, something like CSS. But these two things now, we are were downloaded into my computer, okay, for me to be able to see this stuff like this. If I look at the sources, you could see some JavaScript stuff here. Okay, you can see
Yes.
the pages here. So there is a lot of things now you now begin to see that comes into your browser. You don't typically see them. What you see in the end is the final display of the website. But for you to have it displayed, the HTML file was sent to your computer. The CSS file was sent. If in the process of sending this, it takes time for the maybe CSS to arrive, you see sometimes your website to open, it will look somehow before the thing will not take shape. Have you experienced that kind of thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah,
delay.
I've experienced it here. It's because these files, so they don't all come at the same time, right? If you look here, you'll be seeing some stuff, lines, and then time. This is 5,000 milliseconds, all these kind of fractions of a second. See the time it took, 105 ms, 124 ms. See the file size, 1.1 KB. So this came in to the computer, and the browser is able to understand all these things that came with the response, okay, and interpret it and show it to us in a way that we can appreciate that, oh yes, we are in google.com, we see what we want. And then we go and search, say, let's say look for Nigerian match yesterday. When you search, you see things are coming too, you can see there's some activity here, okay, before your page is displayed. I think this is actually, I need to put it on all. It was on CSS, so we're only seeing the CSS. So when I put on all, you can begin to see the amount of small packages that came. So let's refresh it now. See, you could see them coming, right?
Yeah.
They didn't all come together. See, some of them are still coming like that. There's some delays. You now see the timing of all of them. That's how it does. Some websites, because of the kind of thing that is happening, it might take some seconds more than others. Just depend on how heavy it is. You can see their sizes, bytes, different small things. Like this one now, this favicon.ioc is an icon. Okay. For the page to render the way it is, you're seeing all these things, all of them came. See, there are many things here. To understand this thing totally, you can like it take time, like talk about him on, but see something here now. You could see the header here. Okay. This is the request header. This is the URI, and this one now is just for this icon I clicked. Okay. Now, all of this request header, we are not working to fill it ourselves. Most times our browser does it for us. Okay. If not, if they ask you now to begin to put these things together, you can see many things you're going to put, many configurations. Okay, so our browser does a lot of these things for us and then displays it. Any questions so far?
No question. No question.
Is understood.
Now we'll now move to the next one. So now talk about front end and back end. Okay, before I even move to this one, why I even went to show you that thing was to tell you that, let me just bring it again. Was to tell you that there is sorry, before we digress, there is JavaScript. If you click your JS now, you see different scripts. CSS, you see the CSS that came in, right? Document that came with the page. So on your request response coming to you, it brings all these things pertaining what you requested from the server. Now we move on here. Okay, so now we are now coming down to front end and back end. Now front end is typically what you see on the browser. Okay, what you see on the browser, which as I did google.com, you saw something on the browser, that's the front end. And the front end engineers, they try to optimize that one so that it's appealing to us, so that we could understand the things are doing in the location where they should, excuse me, they should be, right? It's appealing, it's easy to use, user experience is nice, front end, a lot goes into that, right? That's the front end. And majorly, all of that is done using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. HTML is the building block. CSS gives you style, right? For you to see how fine it is. If I come back here, see how fine this Google is. All this thing is CSS. Okay. If you, with time, you understand things like this. Or if you look at this place, see the styles. Yeah, the CSS and that are bringing this thing. You could begin to play with it itself, even on your browser. Okay. Let me try and do something. Let me come and change. Let me inspect this particular one. Okay, this is it. So these are the styles. What can I quickly change that we see? Let me go and change the font size. Instead of 14 pixel, let me make it 7 pixel. Okay, no, not that element. Okay, actually, I changed some. If you observe here, these two have become 7 pixel. Okay.
Yes.
So let me change it back to 14. Hold on. You wash his face. So okay, let me take back to 14. So here now, by playing with this CSS, I can change the font family and things like that. I can affect how my page is displayed. You see, it's back to its normal, but I'm trying to target this one. Let me see. Inspect. This one is an image actually. So it's an image. If you see it here, it's an image. So I can't really do much on it. But if I come to like this Google search button, I can pick it. Okay. Now you have to eat first. Oats. So you can change some background color here sir, and say blue. So you see when I type the blue, the buttons became blue. Okay. So if you play around with this style now, the website will be changing. Okay. But as I'm changing it, I'm not changing it from the server. I'm just changing it on my computer. Because those files were downloaded to my computer to be able to display. If I refresh the page now, even though I've made these buttons blue, if I refresh the page, it will go again and bring the original file and show me what it is. Okay.
Because it's in the server, not on your system.
Yes, in the server, and the request to go to the server and come back.
Okay. Yeah.
It will reload the files. So you see, it resets it. But I can go even go and change this text. Right? You could come here, change the Google search. Instead of it to be Google search, you put something else. Like, let me say, I think I can see it here. So you see, I've changed it to Henry search. Right?
Yeah.
It's no longer Google search. I went and put Henry. I'm just playing with the files that have already been downloaded into my browser. And even when you're learning HTML and CSS, you will do a lot of all this too. If I want to copy some things from this website, I could come and see their styling. Sometimes it's not very clear because it's put in some format that is not clear. Sometimes it's clear. You can then use it and build your own. you could improve your website from other websites by understanding how this works. Okay, but that's enough for this now. So now we are now back to the back end. And then just my boy is really disturbing me.
He wants to be a programmer.
He wants to sleep, but I don't want him to sleep yet. He has not eaten. I have to eat before sleeping. Okay, now, so this is the browser, like we said. The browser handles these three, right? JavaScript gives some kind of effect to your page. There are some things you can do with JavaScript. There's some things you cannot just do with HTML and CSS. You know, you need JavaScript to do put some dynamic actions to your page, right? HTML and CSS is styling. Okay, now we then go to the back end. Now in the back end, you have the web server. Okay, the web server is the one now that when the request comes, it processes the request. You can see the green arrow of request. It enters to the web server. Then the HTTP server in the server, the HTTP server there receives the request, interprets it. You see all those things, when you look at them, there are many stuff there, many write-offs, many text, many jargons to us, but HTTP server understands. It will receive it, and then your app can take data from this HTTP server. And based on that data now, this app now is the one you write. This is the Flask. You can use Flask to write this app. You can use Django to write the app. You could even use JavaScript now at the back end. So this app now is the logic you have done, which we are going to do with Flask. Okay. So based on what we write, it will interpret the response, the request, and then we may say, whenever we see this request, this is what you should give there as response, right? If you're trying to log into a page, is the app now that will now check, okay, do you put the correct password and username? Are we together?
Yes.
There will be a logic that you write in the app to check if the username is correct. Of course, when you talk about logging in, then you talk about database. Database now, when you want information to persist, even for a long time, anytime you want, you store it in a database. So from the app, some information is stored in the database. Someone wants to log in now. Yes, you put a username and password. It will come to your app. Your app is going to analyze what you put and be able to pick your password from the database and your username, maybe your email from the database, and check if it matches. If it doesn't match, it will send the response. In this case, if the app will now send response like a file. It will pick the proper file to send to you and send it to the server, which send to your browser, then display. So if it's 404 error, your app will run now that will decide that, okay, based on this thing, now we don't have this page, or wrong password. It will now say, send this file when there's a wrong password. Are we seeing it now? So the app now, there are some template files here. The app will be sending the right one based on the logic. We'll see all of this using Flask. Flask now, for example, it's not the only thing that can do, but with Flask, you can then begin to handle those files and send the response based on the request to the client's browser, the person that asked for it, and then you now see it as a website, signed in, invalid password, invalid username or password. You type again, you come back to the app. The app may say, the apps, they may write, you cannot try more than 2 times, block. You get, next in PAM, you cannot log in again. You need to do something else. All those things are written in the app. Because you've done after 3 attempts, block, it's how they wrote it in the app. Then the database, it collects data from here and it stores data. You log in, you see your name, you see your date information. Why is it always there? There's a database. The app is working with a database. Okay, so this is not nice. All this one is the back end. Okay. And you can see it's not only Python you can use for back, and you can use PHP. You can also have MySQL. You can use SQL. You also have SQL. You have Postgres for the database. You can have Node.js. Node.js now is where you're using JavaScript for the database. MongoDB is another type of database. There are different databases classified into two categories. You want two broad categories. One is SQL database, and the other is no SQL database, right?
That's not relational.
Yes. So the popular SQL is very popular, right? SQL is typically storing data in kind of tables, columns and rows, columns and rows, columns and rows.
Yeah.
But no SQL doesn't just work columns and rows like that. It's more like storing it somehow as though like a dictionary. That dictionary we talk about in Python, that is like key value pair kind of arrangement. So there are different engines of different type of database. Now, when you're building your app, you will choose the engine you want to use based on the kind of thing you want to handle. There are different types of databases. So all these things are what you learn along the way. So if you want to build an app, the app, is it going to store video like YouTube? Or is it going to store text, just user email and login? Based on that, you choose database that suit that condition. Okay. So we'll go to the next page. Now, this type of structure here, we call it the server-side rendered. So everything is rendered in the server. So you see the server is taking from the app is taking the files and rendering it to you based on your request and the response that should be given to you. There is still the one that we call the API. I think we'll see it down. So now, this page tells us about static and dynamic websites. There are some websites that